It's happening. All right, no cuts. We're just gonna do this. So, I recorded a version of this, not a version, I guess, something, I don't know. No cuts. I recorded a video that was 1.5 years into stand-up, and about a year has passed since that. A lot has happened, and I decided. So that video I did because I was filibustering because I didn't want to go grocery shopping. This video is slightly different because it's premeditated. I sort of have an idea of what I'm going to talk about going into it. But it's going to be thematically similar. So I'm going to be doing a recap of what it's been like between then and now. So there's been about a year has passed since I made that video. You can go watch it. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend it. It is tremendously cringe, and I'm sure this one will be as well, which is part of the, part of what I wanted to talk about, which is having to watch yourself on camera constantly and then grapple with the fact that what you're doing when you're doing stand-up is you're going in front of a bunch of people and you're getting their attention, but then you have to tell, or not, you don't have to tell anybody this, but I guess a lot of it is justifying to myself. It's like, I don't really want this attention, right? I just want to be funny. I just enjoy making people laugh. I enjoy the process of crafting a joke. Crafting. That sounds lame, but I'm an artist. Yeah. Anyway, most of you have tuned out by now. I know that because something that's been a big difference from a year ago is that now I have a podcast, which is, by the way, huge red flag. Does not work on Hinge. If you tell girls you have a podcast, that's no bueno. I have a podcast now, so I have a slightly better understanding of audience retention, and we are 2:29 into this video, so I know that on average people have already tuned out. That's sort of what I've been dealing with the podcast. Quickly go over that. So I started a podcast because I feel like that's just something that's sort of like a necessary evil in trying to make it. And when I say make it, I'm going to probably say that a couple times throughout this video. My definition of making it is just being able to make a living off of comedy. Yes, I have very high aspirations. I want to do everything. I want to be great. But, I would be very content with just making a living off of this, which is something I believe I can do, but, it's still pretty far-fetched. But anyway, so I feel like having a podcast is sort of a prerequisite, a necessary evil, so I started one. And honestly, it's been fun. I just get to talk to people that I enjoy talking to. It is a shit ton of work. It feels like doing SNL almost, because obviously it's way less than SNL, but like, you do it, you edit it. I always say stupid shit and then I have to edit that out, and then, nobody watches it. No one's probably going to watch this. I said that in the last video, and then it somehow ended up getting over 1,000 views. I truly don't think this one is going to do that well. I'm partially saying that in hopes that it does, or at least, or maybe even surpasses it. But yeah, this is right off the bat. I think probably more scatterbrained than the first one. But I told myself I didn't really want to go off I'm doing Trump hands, go off like a checklist or anything. So, yeah, I have a podcast. I started that. I have gained about 800 YouTube subscribers. I'm up to 1,069. Nice. And then on Spotify, I have 21 followers. And basically, nobody actually watches my podcast. No one actually listens to my podcast. I am speaking into the ether. I'm just throwing bullshit into the void, and I'm aware of that. And that awareness makes it somewhat difficult to keep doing, because it's hard to see like why I'm actually doing this. I like to convince myself, and part of the reason I'm convincing myself and justifying making this video is because no matter what happens, whether I make it in comedy or I don't, I'm going to have these to look back on, for better or worse. And I think that's cool. I think tracking your progress is cool. Speaking of which, I made some New Year's resolutions at the end of 2024. Or no, Jesus Christ, at the end of 2023 for the year 2024. And so I'll just go through those because most of them are stand-up related. So the first one was I wanted to do 500 total stand-up sets by 2025. I was at 226 going into 2024, and I did not meet that goal. I made it to 456. So I only did 230 sets over the course of a year, which might sound like a lot, but really it's not, and I don't think it's enough, and I was very disappointed in myself for not reaching that goal. In fact, I just recently surpassed 500, and it's basically the end of March. So that's kind of embarrassing. Right now I'm at 512, if that'll focus. I had this fucking problem the last time I did this. I don't know. I'm at 512 sets. I have a mechanical counter that I count every set with. So I didn't get to that. Finished manuscript for Operation Albatross. That's a screenplay I've been working on. It was a screenplay, then I made it into a manuscript, and then I readapted it back into a screenplay. I actually have spent a lot of the month working on that. This is the 5th iteration of that screenplay. I just went through last night and read through every single page and marked it up. Oh, so I checked that off because I got some deliverables for that. My goal this year is to actually get that pitched, maybe, even though that in and of itself is probably more of a pipe dream than even anything that I have that's stand-up related. But that's neither here nor there. Completed V6, maybe V7. That was for climbing. I did it. Grow a beard. Did not do that. Very disappointed. I'm gonna keep that on my list every single year until I fucking do it. Read 20 books. I read 26. I consider that important for stand-up, for writing. Book 25 shows. So this is one that I want to talk about. I made it my goal at the beginning of 2024 to book 25 shows for stand-up. And not just book 25 shows, it was to book 25 shows without asking for a single show. A lot of stand-up is not about being funny. That's something that I've learned. Not that I'm funny enough, well, we'll get to that, but my goal was to book 25 shows without asking to be booked on a single show, without reaching out to be booked on a single show, without networking or any of that. And I ended up booking... I'm so stupid. 20, 30. I ended up booking 41 shows without asking over the course of a year. So I was really happy about that. And I'll circle back to that later because I'm sort of now disappointed in myself about currently where I am relative to the past year. But after that, it was 10 decent minutes, or killer in parentheses. I'd say decent. I got 10 decent minutes 2 years into comedy. My goal sort of beginning was if I can get 5 pretty solid minutes every single year, then at the end of, 8, 9, or 10 years, then maybe I would have near an hour that I really love. That's probably a little too big of a timeline, and I can probably get more time than that, is what I'm saying. Anyway, I checked that off. I had a show that was Vouch, which I will also talk about that I did and accomplished that. So, in the last video, I was not getting booked a lot. Also, I just really want to quickly touch on financially. I'm still not doing amazing, obviously. I don't make a lot of money, but I am doing better than I was doing because I was literally hemorrhaging money in my last video. My job was fucking me over. I have a new job. That's better. That's going better. Unfortunately, now I'm working more and it's sort of cutting into stand-up, and I really don't like that, especially since a component of my job is creative, and I feel like that's sort of draining. In a way, I feel like it's stimulating and I'm working a muscle, and so it's strengthening, maybe, that, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm crawling out of debt. That's good. So a couple months after I did the past video, I really just don't get booked a lot. It was, I don't know, 2 or 3 a month or something like that. And then there is something in the Chicago comedy scene called Vouch. And it's by the Comedy Gazelle. It's by a guy named Jerry Homedy. He's a comic in the scene. It's a great thing. And the whole idea is like this is a merit-based tryout. And then the winners that get selected at a mic, they have it like every couple of weeks. They get to perform at some real venues, and the big one is the Laugh Factory. And then you perform at the Laugh Factory, and then you have a bunch of bookers from all the top clubs or shows around the city. And then depending on how you do, then you get booked on those shows, and it's sort of supposed to like, I guess I thought in theory like kickstart things for you. So I auditioned for this at a mic. It was at Uptown Tap Room. I can't remember the date. I want to say probably August. So that would be 4 months after the video I made, the past video I made. And the 4 months leading up to that, I really did not get booked a lot. I'd say like maybe like 2 a month. Or that might even be high. No, something like that. Anyway, so I had a pretty good set. I got picked. Then I got to play the Laugh Factory. And that was one of the coolest experiences of my entire life. That was the first time I had, aside from the open mic, actually gotten to play the Laugh Factory, which is one of the biggest clubs in Chicago, if you don't know. And there were like 90 people there. It was a pretty full room. A lot of my friends were there, sitting in the front row too. I'd say the best set I've ever had so far. Looking back on it, yeah, there are a lot of things that I can nitpick myself on, but I would say the pops that I got in that set were there still are probably the best I've ever gotten. First 3 minutes were sluggish and slow, and I wish I could cut them out, and I also ran the light by like 3 minutes, so I didn't even fucking need them. But anyway, so that was amazing. That was like one of those moments where you're like, I'm really doing it. Comedy's amazing. Meritocracy, I got this thing. I crushed. I feel like I crushed. Whatever. The video's on my YouTube if you want to watch it. It doesn't do it justice, but maybe I'm just bad. Anyway, so I did well. And then as I'm in the lobby of the Laugh Factory after shaking hands with one of my best buddies who was there in the front row watching me have that set, there's a comic from LA named Dan Donahue who's a headliner. He's got like 400K on Instagram. He's a really great comic. I remember I watched his set because he was headlining the Vouch show, and I was like, this guy's writing is really fucking good. And he came up to me and he was like, hey, I'm doing Zanies. Do you want to open for, or do you want to do a guest spot at Zanies? And that was like 2 days after Vouch. I think Vouch was a Wednesday, and then that was for a Friday, I think. So he's like, do you want to come do these guest spots at Zanies? So I was like, holy fucking shit. I remember I said, my friends started freaking out. Both of my friends started freaking out. And then I was like, guys, keep it down, keep it cool. And then Dan was like, no, dude, like, this is good. Freaking get excited. And I was like, all right, I'm very excited. But it was so surreal. Because I went from, let's just get to it. So then 2 days later, I get to do a guest spot for him at Zanies. Basically a sold out room. And also a huge fucking club. I'd say the biggest club in the city. The coolest stage I think I've ever performed stand-up on. And that was fucking insane. I got to do 2 shows back to back. I got to hang in the green room, talk to Dan. Such a cool guy. He compared me to Daniel Tosh, who normally when you get a comparison as a stand-up, it's like a bad thing because you're emulating someone. But in this case, I was like, holy shit, no one's ever compared me to him. And Tosh is like, he's my guy, aside from Norm, but I don't sound like Norm at all. I also can't really mimic Norm. I'm not trying to mimic Tosh. I just listen to so much Tosh. Anyway, he said I was like a young Tosh, and I was like, really? So I did that. So I went from not really getting booked to doing the Laugh Factory and Zanies, which probably means nothing to all of you, but is a huge deal to me. I did two of the biggest clubs in the city within 3 days of each other, and they were both absolutely unreal. That entire week, was probably comedically the best week of my entire life, and also just in my life. It was a realization that hard work pays off. That was so gay to say out loud, but it was really, 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 really fucking cool. I sat in my car after the vouch thing, and I just took it in, and I was just like, dude, you just did that, and this is happening, and it felt like such a big deal. So that happens, and then as a result of that, in the wake of it, I get an increase in bookings. I get thrown onto a bunch of different shows, bunch of great shows, and that was sort of like a taste of what I could have. I was doing, rooms that had actual audiences instead of open mics with like 6 people. That lasted, I would say, about 2 months. And then after that, the shows died down again, and people stopped booking me. But I still did get shows trickling in, and then I hit that 41 mark before the end of the year, and I was really happy. I surpassed 25. Now, the reason I bring all that up is because in the past 2 months, have gotten booked on 2 shows. 2 shows. That is not good, because it's a regression. I still am not asking for shows, because in my mind, I should just work on getting funny enough to the point where people deem me worthy to be on their show, or, when they're discussing which people to have on a lineup, mine gets brought up just by virtue of like, this kid's funny. The problem is that I'm not really that funny. I feel like I have one bit. I have one decent bit. It's the Cosmopolitan bit, and that's in the Laugh Factory video. You can see it. Aside from that, I really feel like I don't have anything. Anyway, I don't get booked. And it's, people find out I'm a comic. They're like, oh, I'd love to come see you. By the way, that's bullshit. They're never gonna come see you. I wrote a book too. Everybody's like, oh, I'm gonna read your book. No one's actually gonna do it. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. People would come up to me and be like, oh, I want to see a show. And now I just have to be like, well, I don't even get shows. I don't have shows. I don't have anything for you to see. I have open mics, but you don't want to see that. That's depressing. I'm at a bar, normally going like last, which I enjoy, but still. Yeah, I just don't get shows. I'm not really that worried about it, because I know this is a marathon and not a sprint, but I will say it sort of feels like I have regressed. Not necessarily as a writer and a performer, but somehow overall, I don't know, it just feels like I've been in, it's a slog. It's been a slog. I honestly don't feel like I know anything more about joke writing or how to do stand-up well than I did a year ago. I'm sure if I listened to sets from a year ago, I'd be like, that's dog shit, and there would be some like tangible improvement. But I mean, the average mic set I have, I feel like I've been, especially the past, I'd say 6 months, I bomb almost every set. It's incredible how much I bomb now. I used to think I bombed a lot. I bomb just an incredible, it's just insane how much I bomb. How many sets I have that are just terrible. And I used to feel like, generally, if I had a bad set, I could still extract some data from it. I have a quote on my PC, on my notes app, from Mark Norman that bombing is not failure, it's data. And I agree with that. But I also feel like I just have bombs where the only data I get is I suck. This is probably nothing. So that's really annoying. I'm also learning the guitar somehow that's related to what I'm talking about right now. I'm learning the guitar. I got the guitar. It's a $40 guitar. I got it from fellow comic Max Sorich. Shout out Max Sorich. He's on a bunch of my podcasts. Oh, I forgot to mention, well, I'll get to that. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because it seems like there's this common thing where when you're learning a new skill, you have like this beginner's luck where you increase your skill quite a bit in the very beginning, and then you hit a plateau, and that plateau is harder to break through than the initial one of when you just pick up the guitar. And I feel like I was going through that initial plateau in my past video where I was sort of like, the equivalent for guitar would be like my fingers hurt, I really don't know what I'm doing, and now it's like I can play some songs, but I can't like carry this. I can't do a full song. I can't do a complete song. And I guess comedically also it's like maybe I've come into my own more in terms of finding my voice on stage, but in terms of getting laughs, Jesus Christ, dude, I don't feel like I've gotten any better. I feel like I'm on that second plateau now where on paper I'm a better writer. On paper I'm a better performer, but it really feels like I've just not gotten better. And it's very, very, very frustrating. And yeah, it just feels like I've regressed in a way, even though I know logically I have not. My work ethic has stayed pretty similar, which I would consider decent. That being said, I definitely need to do more. I need to write more. I need to get out more. I only did 15 mics this past month. That's not good enough. Yes, I was working on my screenplay a bunch, but still, that's just not good enough. And part of that has been because of my job and the hours, but still, I need to be better. This is the one thing that I want to do, truly, stand up. This is the one thing I truly want to do. I need to do it more, especially if I want to get better at it, because so much of this is just consistency. So, yeah. Well, now I'm at the point in the video where I don't really know what to say, but I'm sure there's more. Just talking about my general frustrations with stand-up. Also, a lot of great stuff has happened. Through the podcast, I've talked to a lot of great people. And they're also just almost all my friends. I'm a lot more comfortable in a comedy environment, like going to a club and hanging out. That being said, I'm still way more uncomfortable than I'd say the vast majority of people. I feel like everybody says on stage that they have social anxiety, and then when you're actually in a group setting, I feel like very few people actually have that anxiety still. And I'm like, well, since when are you guys all social butterflies? I've seen your bits about being nervous and shit. And I'm always just like a limp dick. Unless I'm drunk. Oh, I'll get onto that. So, I've picked up quite a drinking habit and smoking as well. When I recorded my last video, I really didn't drink that much. Since then, my drinking has gone up quite a bit. And the simple but sad reason to that is just because it makes everything a lot easier. And I would say there was like a 2-month span where I'd say over half of my sets I was inebriated. I was like a little drunk. Maybe not drunk, but I was at least 1 or 2 beers in. And yeah, then I really didn't feel like I was getting better. But it was sort of like this cycle of I don't feel like I'm getting better, but this makes it easier, so I'm going to do it. And then I do it, and I hate myself, and then when I hate myself, I want to drink because it makes it easier, or it like numbs you. Yeah. I'm a little high right now, to be totally honest. Which, I used to be, I feel like, and I feel like this happens for everybody that's a stoner. I wouldn't even, I guess I am a stoner now, but it seems like a lot of people hit a point where getting high goes from just like a a really great time where you're not thinking about things to just the complete opposite, where you're just overanalyzing everything. And I used to really be able to, I would smoke a little bit of a joint, and then I would put it down, and then I would lock in, and I would laser focus on my writing. And now I feel like I get high, and I don't have that focus anymore on writing. Sometimes I do, but oftentimes I feel aimless, and then I get introspective, and then, good God. I mean, the other day I tried to edit a podcast while I was high, and that was so fucking terrible. If you think listening to yourself speak is bad, try listening to yourself doing a podcast while you're high. I was like cutting so much shit out. I texted the person I did the podcast with. I was like, hey man, I think I might just yank this entire episode. And then the next morning I edited it while I was sober, and I was like, this is not even that terrible. That being said, looking back on stuff, it's all terrible, which is brutal. I'm going to look back on this video and be like, damn, that sucks. I know I suck. I know I suck at stand-up. And when people ask me, for whatever reason, it's just like when you tell people, or they find out that you do stand-up. By the way, cat's out of the bag at my work. Everybody knows I do stand-up now. But when you tell people you do stand-up, there's an expectation with that, obviously, for you to be funny. But then I feel like I can't truly say I'm funny or even just good at stand-up, because there's no evidence really of me being good at stand-up. Sure, I've done sets where I've done well and I've gotten laughs, but I feel like this is sort of a batting average. I've seen people who are really terrible crush. I've seen people who are really good bomb. It's all over the place, but what the fuck was I even... That's part of my problem too. On stage, I'm so fucking scatterbrained. Just like I am in real life. Where was I even going with that? I don't even know. Yeah, damn it. I might as well touch on the thing about being scatterbrained on stage though. A lot of my friends have writing styles where they say word for word what they've written, and then say they do 3 sets back to back to back. Back to back to back. I don't know. They do 3 sets, and they're doing the same set list. The transcription of those 3 sets will be basically, if not completely identical. Mine will not be even close to identical, which is very frustrating. It's both very good sometimes, and it's very bad sometimes. I feel like out of my friends, I am the least consistent by far. I feel like I either have a pretty great set or just a really terrible set, because I'll say things on stage and then I'll riff. I just have a compulsion to riffing, and I think it's because I want to be authentic on stage, and this is part of the reason I didn't script this video, is because I think you can tell when someone is, rattling things off the dome and being themselves, and you can tell when someone is reading a teleprompter in their mind. I don't want to be a comic who's reading a teleprompter in their mind. I want to be somebody that the audience feels like they're having a conversation with, having a dialogue with. So to do that, what I do is I have the core idea of a joke, and I know the beats. I know where I know like generally like this is my setup, this is my punchline. Obviously it's more complex than that. Not that much more complex, but there's shit in between. And instead of just doing the same thing every single time, I'll change words around, I'll change my pacing, I'll change my inflection. A lot of the time I do the inflection by accident. I don't even know. Well, the point is I do all this by accident, because sometimes I'll find something that I really love, and then I'll listen to that recording, and the reason it works so well is because I sort of went off script and then circled back. But that moment was so authentic. God, I hate referring to it as that, but that moment it was just a spur of the moment thing. It was just a reaction that I had in that time. And I can't replicate that without sounding like I'm purposely replicating something. So I just had this great moment, and I got a big laugh. And you'd think, okay, we'll just do that exact same thing again. But the reason that worked is because of the circumstances in which it happened. Like the room. There was something... I don't know. I change all my fucking jokes all the time. And I'm in this void. I'm in this twilight zone of just, I have so much fucking dog shit writing and jokes and bits, and I'm constantly writing, and I have so many ideas, and I'm just, when I have a show, say, okay, this is a good example. I had a show called Primetime. It's a really great show. Ooh, interesting thing about that is there was a guy that was a producer on that show, and everybody else was like, we should have Harry Meredith on, and then this guy was like, I don't like Harry Meredith, I don't want to book him, so fuck you, that guy, I know who he is, and he hates me, because I did jokes, and I bombed really bad, like a couple months into stand-up, and he's a huge bitch, and you'd think that someone that hosts an open mic would understand that that's part of comedy, but whatever. I'm totally past that. Anyway, so I had this show coming up, and it was a big show. I had 10 minutes. I knew I was going to do my Cosmopolitan bit, which is like what I feel is like the one decent thing that I've written. Of course, in a couple of years, I'll look back and be like, wow, I can't believe I thought that was good. But I genuinely do believe that's a good bit that I have now. And at open mics, I don't even do it because I feel like I'm not working on new stuff, and I feel guilty. So I'm not really working on that. But anyway, so I have a 10-minute set. That's about a 5-minute bit. And then because I'm working toward this show, I was like, I need to fill that other 4 minutes with stuff that's really strong. So for 2 weeks leading up to that show, I only worked on one bit. I just locked in on this one bit about being a test tube baby, having my half siblings and all this shit. And in those 2 weeks, I was so productive. And then at the end of those 2 weeks, I did that bit in conjunction with the Cosmopolitan bit, and I felt what I had. I felt I had what was one of my best sets. And honestly, one of the only good sets I've had in the past probably 5 or 6 months, genuinely. And part of the reason I was able to work on that bit so diligently is because I had this objective. I had this like, okay, I have a date, I have a deadline, and I need to get this bit polished before that deadline, and then I can click it into place, and then I can do it. Right now, I don't have any shows, ever, so I don't really feel like I have anything to immediately work toward, and because of that, I'm sort of just in this weird, as I said, twilight zone, where I just feel like I have all this fucking shit floating around, all these ideas, and I'm sort of developing them a little here, and then it'll bomb, or I'll get tired of it, and then I'll pick up another idea, and then I'll develop that a little bit. But they're all shit. Like, none of them are actually getting fully developed. They're all just getting incrementally developed and then put on a shelf for later. Because I don't throw anything away. And sometimes that's good, because I have bits from, like, even that bit that I was working on for this Primetime show, the idea, I was going through an old notebook, the idea was from 2 years ago. And I didn't even remember that. And by the way, I do that a lot. I have ideas that I wrote down 2 years ago, and I didn't know how to tackle them. And then I'll come up with them now, and I'll be like, oh my god, this is such a great idea. And I don't even realize I'm stealing from myself. I believe in that moment that I'm making this idea up, and I'm plucking it from thin air, and I'll write that down. And then when I control F in my notes, I'll be like, holy shit, I had this exact same premise 2 years ago. But now I have, I don't know. It's easier to work on now. It's sort of like, Mark Norman says it was like marinating. So I have all these fucking bits, and I'm working on them, and I get a little bit done, and then I either get bored with it, because I don't see a finish line with it. I don't ever know when a bit is done. Gary Goldman says that. It's like poetry. You don't ever know when a bit is finished. I feel like they're never finished, personally. Which is another reason I don't work on the Cosmopolitan bit anymore, is because I just keep fucking adding on to it, and I'm like, I can't just be a one-bit pony. I should actually work on other stuff. So I'll be working on a bit for like a week, and then I get a little bit of progress on it, or I don't, and then back on the shelf. Whether or not I ever say it again, who knows. But doing that, having that as my routine and as my process of going about doing stand-up comedy, I feel like it's really hard to give myself a benchmark of whether or not I'm getting better or not at this, because I'm just constantly fucking failing, just flopping and falling on my fucking fat face on stage. So I don't really know if I'm getting better, because it doesn't feel like any of my bits are getting better. And I feel very aimless. It feels like I've started like 200 books that I got 10 pages into and then just shut and put onto a shelf and said, I'll revisit that later. I'm going to start the next book. And all the books are either mediocre or bad. And when you start writing a book and you're like, oh my God, I think this could be a great idea, and then you do it and you're like, wow, nobody likes this idea, nobody resonates with it. Or what's even fucking worse is you have a bit that you're working on and you are making progress, and then all of a sudden it just stops working and it's inexplicable. I have many bits that I'm thinking of right now that fall into that category, and that is infuriating. Mark Norman says, as you can tell, I listen to a lot of Mark Norman, but like basketball, you fucking shoot it, you get 2 points or 3 if you're Kyle Korver. Shout out Kyle Korver, the greatest sharpshooter of all time. Or Caitlin Clark. God, I love Caitlin Clark. Anyway, you make a basket in basketball, it counts every time. If it goes through the hoop, it counts every single time. In stand-up, you can make the exact same joke, and I know I just said I changed stuff around, but like the core of the joke is the exact same, and I feel like the delivery is very similar as well, and because of who knows fucking why, maybe it's because of the room or the circumstances where I am at the mic, the joke just doesn't fucking work at all. And now you've lost confidence in the joke, and it's very hard to do something that you don't believe is funny. Seinfeld says, don't ask the audience whether something is funny. Tell the audience it's funny, and they'll believe you. It's really hard to do that when you don't even believe that it's funny. And then you start to get into these fucking, why do I think this is funny? Where is this funny? And then you're like breaking it down, and you're like, well, is there even misdirection in this? Not really. This doesn't really have any structure to it. Why did I think this would work? A lot of comedy is surprise, catching you off guard, so I'll read my own bits and be like, where does this surprise people? And oftentimes I'm like, there's nothing surprising about this. I'm just reading a sentence that I wrote that for some fucking reason I thought would be funny. And you'd think, doing this so much, you'd have a better idea of what is and is not funny, but I don't. Honestly, I feel like it's gotten worse. And you can't really bounce ideas off of anybody unless they're a comic that's close to you. And, you know, even some comics are bad at bouncing bits, but like I had an idea today that I bounced off a coworker that's a friend of mine, which is a bad idea, and they just go, yeah, I think you can do better than that. And it's like, dude, that's just the least helpful thing that you could possibly say. It's like, of course I could fucking do better than that, but I'm getting mad at a civilian. I shouldn't do that. I just shouldn't bounce bits off of humans. I'll just stick to comics. Okay. That was a lot about writing and jokes and shit. My plan was to move to New York in August of 2025, which would be about 4 months from recording this video. That's what I initially thought was going to happen. Moving with a bunch of my friends who are good comics. And my rationale behind that was, and still is, I've accomplished nothing in Chicago. I've started out in Chicago. Chicago is my preseason. That's where I'm going to learn how to do stand-up. And then I'll go to New York. That's like the big leagues. Sure, I'm virtually resetting everything. I'm back to 0. But out of 100, I'm still basically at 0 in Chicago anyway, so who cares? I'm going from nothing to nothing. That got moved back a whole year because one of the friends that I was going to move with, basically, whether or not I move is pretty dependent on him moving. He delayed it 1 year. I was initially really mad about that, because I was kind of like, I want to get this thing going, my career. I figured the sooner I can get to New York, the faster I can progress and then reach that level of, making it and making a living off of just doing comedy. That got pushed back a year, which initially I was really upset about. But now, I mean, it's good having that extra time. And, but I just feel like, wow, I had no idea how bad I was. I was like talking about how bad I was, but like really, truly, just how not ready I was. And I told myself I'm going to start asking for shows and like really try to get booked in Chicago the year before I moved to New York. So I was sort of prepared to just go on this like rampage, just go on this tear of like asking all these people for shows and getting out of my comfort zone in that facet of comedy and like networking or fucking whatever bullshit. But then that was pushed back a year, so I'm still in the void. And in the void is where I reside, where I just have all my ideas floating around and nothing's really working. And you go out to an open mic and you feel like you just get nothing done. And it's really hard to then tell yourself, like, no, I just got better. I'm getting better at this. Yeah. I feel like I understand more about stand-up than I did by a lot, but I just can't put it together. And also you watch people, there are some people like this in the Chicago scene. Of course, every scene's going to have people like this, but I mean, you watch some people and it'll be like a dead room at an open mic and you'll be thinking like, there's nothing funny in the world. Funny cannot exist in this environment. And then you'll see that person go up and they will crush. And you'll be like, oh, okay, so I'm just not funny. That person has it. I don't know. I feel like that's an overplayed term, and it's also hard to articulate when you see it. But I mean, truly, you see people who are really fucking good at this, like way better than I feel like I could ever be. And I think I touched on this in the last video. They're not, I mean, it's hard to imagine that I could become that. It's hard to imagine because there's such a finite number of spots. Actually, that's not true. Because this isn't like feast or famine. I don't think that there's a finite number. It just seems like so few, such a low percentage. There are a lot more comics than people realize because you have to take into account all the people just doing open mics. There are a lot of comics, and let's say out of like every 1,000 comics, like one is gonna make a living off of it or something like that. It's some bad ratio like that. You see those people that have it, and they're really fucking good at what they do, and some of my really great friends are this. You watch them and you think, I don't know if I'll ever be that good. It's hard to imagine that I'll ever be able to command a stage like that. But then, try to remind myself, hard work beats talent, blah, blah, blah. But then I don't even feel like I'm working that hard. And then I have to be like, okay, I'm writing a screenplay, I'm making a stupid chopsticks documentary, playing lots of guitar, doing something. And by the way, I do think the guitar helps. Like I was saying with work before, it's sort of like a tax write-off where I can take my mind off of comedy for a little bit because I'm just constantly thinking about comedy, for better or worse. And then second, I feel like you're working a creative muscle, and the better you are, and also learning, you're learning how to learn. And I'm trying to optimize my learning for stand-up. So if I can get good at learning other skills, then that will give me information that will help streamline this learning process. Because ultimately, this learning process is the only one that, it's not the only one that matters, but it's paramount. It's the most important to me, by far. It's everything. It's literally everything. Yeah. I talked about dating in my past video and how I probably couldn't date. Well, folks, I dated somebody. I actually omitted something from this list. It said meet a lovely lady, and I checked that off because I did. I met a lovely lady. Her name was Kelsey. She's wonderful. And we dated for like a couple months. It was, I have nothing bad to say about her, but in that period of time, I did feel like I was getting less done with stand up. I had less time. And I don't even mean that just in terms of like physically being on stage, that kind of time. I mean that in just, I need to be alone a lot. And solitude in the moment is, I'm saying this while I look at 100 Years of Solitude. Fuck that book, by the way. God, that's so ridiculous. That was such a slog to finish. But I feel like solitude and being alone with your thoughts is incredibly important for stand-up. And a really large part of getting better at this and learning how to learn and all that is getting to know myself better. As gay as this sounds, stand-up has been a journey of self-discovery, because you're trying to find your voice, you're trying to find who you are, and then you're like, who am I? How am I supposed to convey who I am if I don't really even know who I am? Now, I don't even think I have that issue. I think I'm pretty unapologetically myself, and it's pretty easy to be myself. But then when you go up on stage, that's a very different story. And then being yourself and showcasing that through your writing is, those are two different beasts. Anyway, so I dated this girl. It was very fun. I got to see how the other half lives, like normal humans, when they're not going to open mics or going to bars and stuff. Honestly, I wasn't crazy about it. I felt like a freak in that environment, and I was kind of like, this is how normal people live. Damn. But not that there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, I broke up with her, and part of the reason was because, and this is a bit intense, and she made fun of me later. We met up recently and talked about this. I kind of whiplashed her, and I sort of was like, you don't have a passion parallel to mine, and that bothers me, which is an unrealistic thing to expect of people. That being said, I do desire it in my partner. And part of that was, you don't have this. Also, I just don't think that you are the one. So if I'm going to be spending this much time doing comedy, I sort of want to be with somebody who I think could be the one, who could be it. And unfortunately, I don't think you are that. So I broke up with her, and she was pissed, understandably. And I don't regret that at all. I'm really glad that I broke up with her. It sucked hurting someone's feelings. But it was a really good learning experience, and it taught me that if I am going to date someone, it needs to be something that I'm really serious about, and I can't pretend that it is serious, because that's just damning to me and that person. So I'm sort of back in that headspace of like, well, I can't really date if I want to take this seriously. I barely have time as is, but life finds a way. So we'll see. Currently Hinge is uninstalled. Hopefully it stays that way. I told myself it would stay that way until I moved to New York, but that's a pretty long time to be abstinent. That being said, I went 517 days before that, so that was a pretty good streak. And when I recorded the past video, I was in the midst of that streak. So I don't know what I'm at now. I'll calculate it, and the counter will tick up. Yeah, we met up recently, and she was telling me that her friends basically all think that my lifestyle is very unrealistic and unsustainable, which is nice to hear. They are not wrong. That's what's pretty brutal. I have awareness about how stupid all of this is. Not stupid. I like to self-deprecate and say it's stupid, but it's really hard to justify sometimes when you're like losing money going to an open mic, and then as I said, you don't feel like you're getting any better, and then you have to like see this big picture. And everybody in some capacity doing any creative endeavor thinks that they have a chance of making it. Once again, we all have very different definitions of that, but everybody thinks they have a chance. Why would it be me? Why the fuck would I be the one that rises to some level of sustainability just through this? It seems foolish to think that way. But then part of it is like, well, you have to sort of be insane. And somebody who's a little bit delusional has, I think, an edge over somebody who's just purely thinking of this in a logical sense. And we're all going to die one day, so who cares? Why wouldn't I just do the thing that I really want to do? Man, this has been so scatterbrained. It's insane. Do I have anything else? What the fuck are we at? Oh, 50 minutes. Damn. Yeah, I can't wait to watch this video back in a year and be like, God, you're so cringe. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. Oh yeah, this is a random thing. I can see my socks right now in the camera lens, or the fucking screen at least. So I did the podcast, and I technically have the most viewed stand-up comedy podcast in the city of Chicago, in the Chicago comedy scene. I think that's true. And it's only because people are in defeat. And particularly there's a specific niche of people, I'd say 99% men, who are into guys in socks. And this has been a whole fucking thing that I've learned about. I never used to think anything of myself wearing socks. And now I think about it quite a bit, because men on the internet have jerked off to me wearing socks, which is pretty insane. I bought into it at first because I was getting a lot of views and clicks and engagement. And I was like, no press is bad press. But then I thought to myself, I'm kind of building, I want the foundation of this to be strong. And right now I'm building a faulty foundation. I'm building something that's not actually built on anything substantial or real. No one is listening to my podcast or watching my podcast because they actually enjoy what I have to say, or find it interesting or funny, or any of these reasons. They are purely doing it because I have socked feet that they like, and I am a twink to them, and also to most people. And that is frustrating. I sort of know what it's like to be a woman a little bit. The perspective I've gained from having a podcast, it's pretty tremendous. Yeah, so I'm sure 1 or 2 or maybe 200 sock freaks will jerk off to this video. That's cool. Also, I've been manspreading quite a bit. Never used to think anything of that. They've raised awareness to it. Thank you, guys. It means a lot. Let's see if I have anything else, and then I'll get out of here. I wonder how many views this is going to get, because the first one I was like, oh, it's not going to get any views, and then it actually got views. I have a feeling this one is not going to get any views, or at least retention. That was so all over the place. I guess I'll say some closing remarks. All of that being said, I love stand-up. Stand-up is the best. I'm not being held hostage saying that. Stand-up is the greatest. I'm not going to quit because I really don't feel like I have any real-world skills, and I just feel like I can't really have an actual job because I'll blow my brains out. But at the moment, it feels like a slog, and I have some awareness about the plateau that I'm at. I need to just keep working through it. But yeah, sometimes it feels a little hopeless. That being, yeah, I'm not going to quit. I don't care. I don't care, because I enjoy doing it for free. So I'm just going to keep doing it. for free until someone pays me to do it. And I would like to be great at it. Something I have thought a lot about over the past year has been mastery. Wow. I just want to get good at one thing. One thing. Most people go through their lives and they never really get truly good at anything. They get caught into these grooves and they just stay in them and they never deviate from them and they never grow. I'm generalizing so much. Who the fuck am I even talking about? I'm an idiot. I'm 24 years old. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, most people, they have like dreams, or sometimes they don't even have dreams, but most people just don't get great at anything. They don't master anything. I want to master stand-up. I want to do 10,000 hours. I want to get to that point with stand-up comedy. It's not an attention thing. I know I'm saying this into a camera and I'm posting it onto the fucking internet, but I want to get great. I want to be great at it. And I'm not going to stop until I accomplish that. So, yeah. Until next year, I guess. That was great. That was fun. I'm not going to regret it.